watches us, dear viewers. Robert Gibson, XJ, and I read our first Dan Abnett story on the podcast tonight. It is called Pestilence, and I'm going to immediately go into the summary without any delay, except for this delay and this delay. Never mind. An Imperial medicae, Lemual Sark for short, investigates a strange disease called the Uhlren pox, a mysterious and deadly plague that strikes down the Imperial Guardsmen combating in the area. Sark's research leads to the Hospice of Saint Bastian, where he is mistaken for an inmate. Thus, as such people come voluntarily, no harm comes to him. Explaining that he is there to find a single man and interrogate them, Sark is allowed to stay, though under close and watchful gaze of the brotherhood. The man Sark searches for turns out to be Colonel, and I'm going to butcher this name. I have no idea how to pronounce it. I've tried different monikers. I'll try Ebhoe. I'm not really sure. Ebhoe. Who knows? Mr. E. Colonel. I'm just gonna call him Colonel. There we go. So Colonel of the late 23rd Lammark Lancers. The man is in terrible shape and fears light, which Sark later explores to get what he needs. The Colonel's story is one of tragedy. The first time he recounts this tale of plague and suffering, where the Adeptus Astartes of the Doom Eagles chapter fought against the Archenemy and a horrible curse, he utters a demonic word that makes the inmates of the asylum go into hysteria. Forbidden from seeking the Colonel again, Sark does not relent and pushes the man for the truth. It is then discovered the origin of the plague that destroyed the force of purity. The apothecary of the Doom Eagles knew not what he was doing. He was the one being used by the powers of the dark gods to spread the plague. As others looked for salvation, he was actually their enemy. But he knew not what he was doing. And only flame could cleanse this space marine now. The last thing that Colonel did before suffering the horrible wounds we later see upon him, exploding the lab and ending the terror of that plague. The Colonel doesn't live much longer. Faced with the horrors of what he had to do once again, his psyche cannot handle it. The terrible situation he was in, reliving it, has caused his death. But at least Sark, now knowing what must be done, goes back to his superiors. And just like last time, the plague is stopped as the officials, apothecaries, and doctors and scientists are executed in hopes of finding the one who started the plague. And sooner or later, it does stop, and the Imperium is victorious. But all Sark can think about is the fact that Colonel had no eyes, but still was afraid of the light. And that is the story of Pestilence by Dan Abnett. So, let's see who thinks what. Robert, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, well, I'm going to try and transcend my limitations as a reader here, because although the Warhammer universe is not my cup of tea at all, I don't regard that as the fault of the stories. In fact, I'm quite impressed by the sheer, the unexpectedness that it is possible to have a shared background, which with a system that works so that so many writers can contribute to a shared background and it still remains fairly coherent. Anyway, I want to pick on one aspect of this story. I think what impressed me the most, though perhaps not fundamental to the story itself, but was just the fact that when Sark arrives at the Hospice of Saint Bastian, that he doesn't know that it's an asylum. That impressed me because it kind of demonstrates that there's too much to keep track of in this vast universe. It's the sort of mistake that would not happen so much in a thriller set on Earth, I don't think. But in this universe, it makes sense that the mistakes one can make are colossal, because the whole setup is colossal.
Actually, this reminds me. There's an entire tale. I'm sorry that I interrupted you, Robert. But there's an entire tale in the Warhammer universe, which basically starts with the miscalculations were 300 meters, and it started a war or something like that. You know, that's a constant theme in the Warhammer universe. The idea that there's so much to keep track of. There's so many, like trillions, billions of not people but worlds in the Warhammer universe, that it's just a bureaucratical like nightmare.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting aspect of the tales.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, do go on.
Yeah, in fact, you wonder why the whole thing hasn't collapsed under its own weight into total chaos. But anyway, the other points I've got to make are, well, there's one other positive point to make, which I thought the ending was very good. A lame way to say it, but I can't think of any other way to say it. It was a horrifying but very good ending. And the whole thing, it did keep me reading, even though I'm not the ideal reader for this sort of thing. It did keep me reading. I want to make a comparison in case some readers are familiar with the Dumarest saga by E.C. Tubb. That also has a vast, sprawling universe. It's only the work of one writer, but anyway, it's vast and it's sprawling and it's very bleak. And that reminds me of this Warhammer stuff. I just want to make a little tiddly mischievous comment, which is on line 9 of the story. The word enervating is used when I think it must mean the opposite. From the context, it should mean energizing, not enervating. It reminds me of a leftist agitator who said, we must enervate the base. And I thought, yes, chum, you go and enervate the base. That'll please me a tremendous amount. But that's just one.
I like how you always try to pick a fight with the Warhammer authors. It's like you don't correct anyone else. But you're like, all right, let's take the the fat base that has the most of people currently, and let's edit their books instead of I don't know, all the dead authors.
Well, I'm not aware actually that I'm prejudiced in that way. I'm going out of my way to say
I'm gonna make a little clip show of just every time you correct something, including on our interview with Graham McNeil. That was a man. Anyway, I'll do a little clip show. I think it'll be fun for the
I don't
viewers.
remember. I don't remember. Anyway, I'm not conscious of thinking, but that particular one, using enervate to mean energize, I thought was worth picking on, because I've come across that sort of thing before. Nothing to do with Warhammer though.
Yeah, it's all in good fun.
Yeah,
I'm sure you understood that.
Sorry, just one more point, which is that, as I said about the ending being good, there's a phrase, iatrogenic illness, meaning illness caused by doctors, which is relevant here. Anyway, I'll give it a high score. Not quite sure what yet.
Okay. All right, XJ.
As with any Warhammer story, it starts off, for me anyway, it starts off as a fairly difficult read just because of all the fan stuff that I have to first wade through before I actually get to the meat of the story. A lot of the things like a lot of the more like the names of all the different legions, I have no idea what separated the Doom Eagles, for instance, from your average Marine until very much later when the Colonel actually described the stature of the Doom Eagles himself. But barring that, first of all, I have to say there are some I'm not gonna talk about that for the moment. The atmosphere in this story is really, really good. I thought the description of Saint Bastian's is just amazing, with very high creep factor, and the most of the creep factor being almost concentrated solely on the white robed Bicon sisters, who literally does nothing except stand in the shadows and silently watch most of the time. It was like I thought the description of the asylum was pretty good when Sark went down to meet with the Colonel, and there's some I don't want to cheapen it by calling it a trick, but way of writing maybe that I am totally going to steal. So from the end of chapter 3 to end of chapter 4, when Sark is talking to the Colonel, and I'm going to read. Cold and cutting, the voice came again, sharper than before. Purity was a wasted place. And then we cut immediately to the actual passage. Purity was a wasted place. We didn't want to go there, but the Archenemy had taken the eastern continent and razed the hives and northern cities, and the northern cities were in peril. So I thought that was an amazing sleight of hand, amazing piece of editing, if I could say that. It transitions from the dialogue with Sark into immediately the flashback of the Colonel, and in the most dramatic and cinematic way possible. And I thought that was that when I read that, I was like, oh, this is so good, and I am totally going to steal that bit of craftsmanship right there. Besides that, I thought the story actually had quite a bit of
He's gone.
It's gone. Well, we shall continue.
Hey guys, I disconnected there. My bad.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll just continue with what I have to say. There's a lot of twists and turns in the story that I quite appreciated. I think it would be fitting. I think it would make more sense if I just describe my feelings as I was reading the story. So as I was reading the description, the flashback of the Colonel on Purity, I thought to myself, this Valis dude isn't a very good doctor, is he? And the reason that I thought that way was because his treatment was of the disease was actually quite bad. Because like if I was a doctor and I had a plague breakout on, and I need to make a segue into how well Dan Abnett had described the conditions on Purity, which is always bright, very little sunshine, and the dreariness that just comes with just having sunlight in your eyes the whole time, and very cold too. So it's very cold. It is so always bright, and Valis's first approach to dealing with the disease is to throw more light by lighting up everything. That just doesn't make sense, because if a disease that came from an environment like that, you would think as a doctor your first thing would be to do the complete opposite of what he did, because the disease would have adapted to the conditions of very bright sunlight, almost uninterrupted sunlight, and adapted to spread in very cold conditions. That when I read that part about Valis's first treatment, I was like, man, this guy is not a very good doctor, is he? And the other thing is, like, we're talking about a Warhammer universe here. If you have a plague that you can't seem to stop with conventional medicine, I think the first thing you think of is that this is the work of chaos. And I'm going to refrain from concluding that, but let's just say by continuing that train of thought, because I think that it's worth for readers to find out themselves. But I was very pleasantly surprised by how the thing twisted and ended at the end, I suppose. Yeah. Good story.
Mm. Yep.
There's a certain amount of ambiguity on, and how do I say this, ignorance, which is actually propagated by the Imperium. The Imperium doesn't want the population and most people entire really knowing about chaos and what it is really like, what it's capable of. And there's it's not just like a stupid totalitarian idea either. In this universe there is actually a reason for it, and it's really because if you believe in chaos, it becomes stronger. It's, if you recall, Graham McNeil was talking about it, you know, chaos is emotion, right? It's all emotion, all of the spectrum of it. And so whether you understand it or not, you will be contributing to into it in some way. But if you knew about it and you knew exactly what it could do, your imagination could add to it much stronger than it already is. So potentially, if everybody knew exactly what chaos was capable of, you would actually make chaos even stronger. So you like double their power, because people would even start imagining what else could they be able to do, and then they can do it, right? So it's a very interesting part of the mythos.
So you're telling me that even very high-ranking people in the Imperium, and I assume the Doom Eagles to know what they're up against more or less, that even the Doom Eagles would be shielded from the knowledge of chaos. Like most of them just fight without knowing who exactly they're fighting for against.
That is a big point of contention as to who knows what.
Mm-hmm.
And the real answer that I will give you, like not the answer in the universe, but the real answer is it depends on the author. Actually.
Okay.
So some authors write their Space Marines like they're like yeah, but we're superhuman, so we can withstand that. Our minds are not that easily corruptible, so we can know more information. But some authors write Space Marines as a little bit more human. where even a single idea can corrupt their mind. For me, it's very hard to answer because I've read different. This is the thing, right? Warhammer keeps changing. Like for example, there are these new concepts right now in the game, which are really foreign to me. Like I've stopped paying attention to what was going on in the current timeline about, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. And you can really see, like, when I started reading Warhammer, lore was taken kind of in a jovial, comedic horror way. And the more time moved on, the more it progressed into being more and more serious. Like, for example, Pestilence. And so, to me, the the different eras of Warhammer have different ways that they treat with this chaotic idea. But I think, I guess the way I would say it is, if you don't need to know it, they probably won't tell you. That's the way I see
That's fair enough. So I guess my follow-up question would be, do you think that the Doom Eagles in this story, in Pestilence, knew? Because so the thing is, I don't really want to give away the ending of the story. I don't know how my co-hosts feel about that, but I do think that there is it is a very nice little bit of a twist for readers to find out themselves. It does seem to me, at least, that some in the fighting force of purity knew about it, because one chap did because of that knowledge, one chap managed to save the whole thing. Well, safe in Warhammer terms.
God, you ask a good question. I think the Doom Eagles don't know the extent of the problem. I think they know that the problem could be somehow connected to the ruinous powers, but they haven't ruled out other ideas. And maybe because it's all hinging on this apothecary, I mean, I revealed in the recap already what happened in the end, unfortunately, actually.
Too bad.
Um, yeah. So the unfortunate situation is, I think, because he was in charge of it, right? He was able to sort of put a stop in information flowing to the right channels.
Well, I thought that the eventual twist anyway was very well done. It's all in keeping with. I mean, this is actually just as an aside, I believe, because it worked in the favor of the story. Because eventually we come to find out that that the ignorance, shall we say, of the apothecary was not just because he is incompetent. That there is a real rooted reason as to why it is a deliberate decision on his part to give the sort of treatments that he did. And that was the one that was the point that that I am quite pleased to read with. Not that the story needs any sort of affirmation from me, but I thought that when I was reading it, those were my thoughts. I thought I thought this was a plot loophole here. Valis is being extraordinarily stupid, and then it was answered in the end, and I was like, yep, okay, nicely wrapped up.
Hmm.
All right. Well, Robert, do you have anything else you'd like to say about Pestilence?
Not about the specific story, but just Lovecraft's blind idiot chaos god Azathoth seems like would be quite a happy inhabitant of the Warhammer universe. He kind of bubbles at the center of infinity. And I think that the Warhammer concept of chaos seems like it's the same kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
Randomness.
a lot of Eldritch horror spawns from Lovecraft, so it's no wonder.
Yeah. I would give the story different scores depending on whether I'm reacting to it emotionally or intellectually. Intellectually, I would give it a very high score, saying perhaps 9. Emotionally, I'd give it a lower score, but which isn't really very meaningful. It's just reflecting my own personality. I'd perhaps give it about 6 or 7.
All right.
Is that because you find the Warhammer universe to be very depressing?
Yes, but I don't think that would be my answer, but I don't think it's a very good answer. It's not one that I'm very proud of. It's just that I can't find a better one. But after all, I do read lots of other depressing stuff, which I enjoy very much. So I don't know. It's a mystery to me, but I'm hoping that in the hereafter, all these matters will be cleared up.
I think that's a fair enough take to have. I mean, I would. There is only so much grimdark I can personally handle myself. So, yeah, I do like a little bit of hope at the end, just a little bit.
Yeah,
There's a little bit of hope in the end.
I mean, yes, this story does have a little bit of hope. Less that there will be no more. The plague will stop after all.
Yep. All right.
Oh,
I will give it a.
Before we go into that, there's one more thing I want to say, and that is that I really like the character of Colonel Ebhoe. Love it, because you have this guy that is terribly scarred, and he just wants to live his life in peace, right? And then this Sark fellow came. I also have to remark how in my mind, it took me a while to read Lemual Sark, and I'm still struggling with it because I keep seeing it as Samuel Luck. Anyway, so Sark came to interview Colonel Ebhoe, and Colonel Ebhoe was just like, I don't want anything to do with you. And then Sark was like, look, lots of people are dying. Your testimony can help. And then Colonel Ebhoe was like, how many? And I could just imagine, I could just feel that sense of duty that made him ask that question. And then Sark was like, gave a rundown of numbers, 2.5 million in somewhere in Genji Jova itself. And Colonel Ebhoe was like, all right, I'll talk, because it is my duty to do so. Or at least that's what I'm projecting onto Colonel Ebhoe. Either way, stand-up character, and I really like him.
Yeah, it's a strong point in the story.
His reveal, the things he was living with, the things that were left. I think that's the epitome of an Imperial Guardsman in the Warhammer universe. He did everything for the Emperor, and so he was given chance to live. It's a horrible existence. Existence that most of us would say, no, I'd rather not. But in that universe, I guess at least living is good enough.
Yeah, he gave everything he had. Well, almost everything. There's just a little bit left for himself. And he was still asked to give that in the end. And he did. That is
Man.
That is Giga Chat there, man.
That is an Imperial Guardsman
Yeah.
with balls of steel. All right. Well, 7.5 out of 10 for me. Dan Abnett is pretty great. Graham McNeil is just as good, if you ask my humble opinion, sometimes better. But, I mean, of course, Dan Abnett has the reputation of being the man who pulled Warhammer and really made it sing. And I tend to agree with that. I think all of his stories, maybe we could look at another short story of his that is a bit more, thought-provoking, like The Last Church was, for example, right? But first, I thought we would look at a pastiche, a work of his that is very, very Warhammer, that gets into the meat of things, and Pestilence does that well. Anyway, yeah, 7.5 out of me. Really, really great. Really like this story.
All right. It's we are unanimous again. Well, actually no. We are 2.5 unanimous because Rob gives it a very high intellectual score, but low emotionally. Well, okay. I'll give it a 7.
Very nice. Right, viewers, thank you so much for watching another episode. Hope you enjoyed it. If you've got some comments, please leave them down there. Like, subscribe, tell your school about it, make out flyers, send them to your coworkers, so on and so forth. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a good week.
Have a good week, guys.